vacation, huh?
Sure.
Let's see. So yesterday, after you guys finished server, I moved that folder from one volume to the other, and we lost all the. I lost all the permissions on it.
Yeah.
So that's in Windows. So if you move it from one place to the other, you're gonna lose permission, like we discussed before. So today we're gonna do the answer for chapter 4, and we need to go ahead and start chapter 5.
Okay.
Maybe if we get some time, we can do some PowerShell commands to show you how to create virtual tests.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. The good things is on the virtual classes is good. You didn't have to go to class, but it's you guys missing the hands-on part. Because usually I force my students to do all the hands-on on the chapters. So usually I will do the one on Cengage, you do it at home, and the one in the chapters you do it at the school.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but how is the online labs? Are you guys doing it?
Yeah.
So?
Like I said, I got a lot of stuff going on with life and stuff like that. But, especially the wife and the kid being out of school. Daddy do this, daddy do that. Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm saying that is the weight on these labs are more than the test.
Yeah, I know.
So that's why you need to do the lab. Plus, it helps you to understand the material better. I mean, we can talk about it, but it's not going to sink till you do it.
Right. Mr. Charif,
sometimes you have to do it multiple times to comprehend it.
I did find a small little, I guess you call them like a workstation computer for like $200.
What model?
Like to put
Precision?
Say again?
Dell Precision?
No, I think it's a Dell, but I'm not sure what model it is. Give me 1 second, I'll look it up.
Usually Dell, they have they classify the workstation. The model is Precision.
No, it's a Lenovo.
What? Oh, Lenovo, not Dell.
Yeah, IBM.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you have the OS and you have a good memory, a lot of memory, and it's okay. Okay, so we're not gonna wait for the other people. That's 8 o'clock already, 8:02. So let's go over the back of the chapter real quick. Let's see. If you go ahead to your book, and at the end of the book, they have review questions. It's on page 159. If you have the book, they have like 32 questions. Now, I've seen on the previous test, they have some questions from this book, from the review part. So it's going to help you on the test. Okay, question number 1. First of all, do you see the review questions on your electronic book?
Give me 1 second. 1 second, Mr. Charif. Okay.
No problem. If you have the physical book, it's 159. I don't know on the electronic what page. So after we finish the review question, we need to start chapter 6, which is this very good chapter, talks about the storage and how to create a pool and all that stuff. Okay, so the first question is really easy. They're asking you, which of the following is an example of long-term storage? So long-term storage, basically, option number 1, you have magnetic tape. On option number 2, CPU cache. Option number C, so I should say C, SSD and DRAM. So the good answer for this one is magnetic tape, which is option A and option C. That's a long-term storage. Which of the following is true about an SSD? Using magnetic ladders, has no moving parts. We stop right there.
No.
So, B is correct, has no moving parts. That's one of the characteristic of SSD, because SSD is like a memory, like a RAM. They'll have no mechanical parts. So it doesn't have read heads and write heads like the old drives. Now, number 3 is interesting. It said, which of the following is an example of what a server uses a storage for? Choose all that apply. So the server, you need to give an example what a server uses storage for. So basically, number 1, option number A, I should say A. Option A is page file. Can we use the storage for a page file? The answer is yes. And that's why we use what we call virtual memory. And can we use that to store virtual machines? And the answer is yes. A working memory? No. We have the physical RAM. Can we store documents in there? The answer is yes. So the answer is A, B, and D. Now, number 4, which of the following is true about a page file? What's the ideal configuration for a page file? We need to install it where? It should be stored on a separate disk from the Windows folder. So if you have an old disk, remember we talked about if you have an old disk is not used or something like that, you can use it for page files or virtual memory. So the option is A. Option A is the right answer. Okay. So local storage is rarely direct attached storage. Is that true or false?
That's true.
That's true. How? They say local storage is rarely direct attached storage.
Oh. No,
Rarely.
that's false.
That's false, yes. Number 6, you want shared network storage that is easy to set up and geared toward file sharing with several file sharing protocols, but you do not want the device to be dedicated to a single computer. What should you consider buying?
Network NAS.
NAS, that's right, NAS. I got one over here, and I need to buy another one. I like to buy the one with SSD instead of the old drives. Okay, what type of interface are likely to find on DAS device for connecting the device to the server that uses it? So the answer, the option for the answer is A, SATA, B, IDE, C, parallel ATA, and D is the external SATA. So the answer is external SATA, which is D. Okay. Now, number 8. You have 4 servers that need access to shared storage because you are configuring them in a cluster. And this is the key, cluster. Which storage solution should you consider for these applications? You got NAS, you got SAN, you got SCSI, you got DAS. So when we need the cluster server, when we configure cluster server, what do we need? We need the common storage.
Yes.
SAN. We put the SAN. That's the most popular that we use today. SAN. Storage Area Network. So option B is the correct one. Okay, which of the following is defined as a physical component with a disk interface connector? So you got format, partition, volume, disk drive. So the answer is disk drive as physical component. So you have installed a new disk and created a volume on it. What should you do before you store files on it? Any disk, what are you supposed to do before you use it? Come on.
Format.
Format. You need to format it. That's right. Okay. What disk interface technology transfer data over a parallel bus? You have SATA, USB, SAS, and SCSI.
SCSI.
SCSI, that's right. SCSI. Number 12, what is created automatically when you install Windows Server 2016 on a system with a disk drive that has never had an OS installed on it before? So the option is system volume, dynamic disk, GPT, extended partition. So create a system volume. That's created automatically when you install Windows Server 2016. Okay, number 13, what type of volume or partition can be created on a basic disk? We talked about basic.
Yep.
So we have basic and dynamic, right? So we talked about the basic. So option A, span volume, stripe partition, extended partition, simple volume. So which of the following? What type of volumes are can be? Choose all that apply. That means we have more than one answer. We can do extended partition and we can do simple volume. That means it's on one disk. Now, if we need to create span volume and stripe partition, you need more than one disk. And you need to convert them to what?
Dynamic.
Dynamic. That's exactly right. Number 14, which of the following is true about GPT disk? They support a maximum volume size of 2 terabyte, which is not true. GPT is a default when initialized disk. They use CRC protection for the partition table. Because what we used to use before GPT?
MBT.
We used to use master boot record, MBR. So the new technology is GPT, which is better and more, let's let's say it's more resilient. Let's put it that way. So they use CRC protection for the data partition. Number 15, you have a server with Windows Server 2016 installed on disk 0, a basic disk, and you are using the server to store user documents, and you have 2 more disks that you can install in that server. What should you do if you want to provide fault tolerance for users' documents?
Convert to RAID 5.
That's
Install
right.
the 2 disks and make a RAID 5.
Well, this doesn't have to be RAID 5. You can, well, you have, what they're saying is you have the operating system on disk 0, and you have 2 other disks, and you have 2 more disks, and that's the key. You have 2 more disks that you can install, because if you do, so you can put those into some kind of create span and volume using disk 1 and disk 2. So convert the new disk or disks to GPT, create span volume using disk 1 and disk 2. So let's see, what should you do if you want to provide fault tolerance for users' document? Well, I don't think this is a good answer. Convert the new disk to GPT, create span volume using disk 1 and disk 2. If you're using disk 1 and disk 2, the only way you can do with them is what? You can only mirror those disks. Now, if you want to create fault tolerance with the 3 disks, then you need RAID 5. But if you read RAID 5, you can. What you can do, you can, how you make RAID 5? Basically, you have to have some kind of equal size disk, or always you go with smallest one. And you can read RAID 5 from the operating system, which is the software RAID. Now the question is, if you want to use disk 0 and disk 1 and disk 2, if you change it, you need to put all these disks onto dynamic. Then also the operating system is going to be in that disk. So if one of the disks fail, you still can operate. So in the book, say convert the new disks. Great span volume. Well, let me see something. What should you do to provide fault tolerance? Yeah. No, the only fault tolerance you will have if you have mirror with disk 1 and disk 2. Basically, you write the data on disk 1 and disk 2. Now, if you want to really fault tolerance and speed, you create RAID 5 software RAID. Okay, so number 16, you need a disk system that provides the best performance for a new application that frequently reads and writes data to the disk. You're not concerned about disk fault tolerance because the data will be backed up each day. Performance is the main concern. So what type of volume arrangement should you use? You have a span volume, right? RAID 1, you have RAID 0, and you have RAID 5.
I would say.
What do you think?
I'd say RAID 2.
RAID 2, this is not an option. So you have RAID, you have span volume, you have RAID 1, you have RAID 5, RAID 0, and RAID 5.
RAID 5.
What's the difference between span volume and RAID 0?
That's the one that always stumps me.
Span volume, basically, you write on the first disk and you go to write on the second disk. RAID zeros,
Right.
which is striped volume, you write on,
Splits it.
yeah, you write on the same times on the multiple disks, which is give you a better performance. And that's what they want. They want performance.
Okay.
So that's basically a striped volume, which is RAID 0. They call it RAID 0. Now, if you go to back on the chapter to, let's say, what back in the beginning of the chapter, I don't know what page. So they have a special page talks about all that stuff. Okay, so on page 116. Striped volume extends across 2 or more dynamic disks, but data is written to all disks in the volume equally. So it's written at the same time equally. It's true does not provide fault tolerance, but it's going to be a lot faster. It's like some people writing documents, multiple people writing documents instead of one. See? So that's why. That's why I would go with the RAID 0. They call it RAID 0. And this is all on page 116. They have this is the types of volume on page 116. You need to read that page. It's very, very useful. Now, number 17, you need to protect sensitive file from unauthorized users, even if the disk is stolen. What feature should you use and on what file system? Well, first of all, what we need to encrypt it, basically. And if you want to encrypt it, what file system support encryption?
NTFS.
NTFS, that's why. Okay. Okay, 18. Which of the following PowerShell commandlet will allow you to view list of disks?
Get disk.
Verb get disk. There's no S, just get disk. Okay, so always we use verb and noun, a singular noun, not plural, just single. Get disk. You come across a file with .vhd extension in your server, on your server's hard disk. What should you do to see this file contents? Which is basically what's VHD? It's a virtual hard disk. The virtual hard disk basically nothing but a file. So to view it, what are you supposed to do? You need
Load up a virtual machine.
To mount it. You need to mount it. Mount the file. So the option is D. And actually, that's what we're going to talk about on the next chapter. They talk about the VHD and VHDX. And we're going to talk about thick provisioning and thin provisioning, and there's a difference between them. Okay. Questions so far?
No, sir.
So on the level of 0 to 100, how you know all this information or what? So?
About an 85.
Okay, you pass.
Yeah, sound like 80.
Well, good. If you do that, that's fine. So that means you'll ace the test. Number 20. Which of the following virtual disk formats support virtual disks up to 2 terabyte and allow backward compatibility with Windows Server 2008? And also you can include that Windows 7.
MBR. I don't know.
That's not an option. Do you see the? Do you have the questions by chance? In the back of the chapter?
I'm actually in the book. Yeah, what page is it on again in the book?
In the book is page 160.
Okay, perfect.
150, 160, and 161. Review questions. So they ask which of the following virtual disk formats support a virtual disk up to 2 terabyte and allows backward compatibility with Windows Server 2008. You have VHD, Resilient File System, VHDX, and FAT. What do you think? We talked about that.
In fact,
No, FAT is old, man. That is an old file system we used to use long time ago, not 2008 server. That has no security. We use, so then they're talking about virtual disk. They're not talking about just any disk. When we talk about virtual disk, we have two options, either VHD or VHDX. Okay? So for backup compatibility with Windows Server 2008 or Windows 7, we use VHD. Okay? So VHD support 2 terabyte, and they give you an option if you want to create VHD to be dynamic or fixed. So which one is better, dynamic or fixed for performance? Fixed, that's right. Okay, next one. What type of virtual disk would you create if you need to use virtual disk in production environment that require fast disk performance?
D.
Well, they're asking about type of virtual disk. When we say type,
C.
means we're talking about dynamic or fixed. You follow what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
same
it's gonna
thing,
be
fixed. Now, especially, I mean, this is like really, it's not a, let's see. It depends, to be honest with you. If you use in 2016 or 19, and if you use them VHDX, then dynamic is good. But if you use a VHD, it's better to use fixed. The fixed disk basically doesn't take all the overheads. Okay, so it'll be a lot faster in this case to use fixed disk. So I guess to answer it correctly, you get a fixed size. So the disadvantage of it is if you don't use the whole storage, you're stuck with it, okay? Number 22, which is the following is a Unix native file sharing protocol that is supported by Windows Server 2016 file and storage services. Come on, we're talking about Linux and Unix. Network system, NFS. Remember we talked about NFS? It's NFS. That's on the, what page is that? Somewhere we talked about the file sharing. Number 23, which is the following Windows Server 2016 role services is required to share folders? So you're talking about
file server.
Yeah, file server. That's right. This file server.
File printer server.
File server, according to the answer, I mean the option of the answers, which is option number A or option A. Number 24, which of the following can be used to create chairs? Oh, you got multiple ways to do it.
All of them.
You got advanced sharing, simple file sharing, and file and storage services. So those are the three options: A, C, and D. Let me see who's gonna remember number 25. Which SMB share option should you enable if you do not want user to see files they do not have at least read permission to it? So in other words, what option you need to do to hide your file sharing, if, or at least you need a read access to see the files. So at least you need the read permission to see or to view all the files.
That'd be D.
D, access-based enumeration. We talked about that last time. Access-based enumeration. Once you enable this one here, so user, they don't have any kind of permission, they cannot see it when they go to the network. When you go click on the network discovery, and if you click on any machine that shares file on it, they're not going to see what's shared. That's basically what it is, unless if you have a permission. Now, 26, which of the following commands or commandlets can be used to list the shares on the computer? Choose all that apply.
C
Yeah,
and
net
A.
share. Net share and get SMB share. B and C,
B.
or BC. B and C. Okay. Which administrative share does Active Directory use for replication? Where do we install the Active Directory? In which volume? Sys volume. Sys volume.
Yeah.
So that's B. Okay, number 28. You need highly available file sharing system that accommodates the native Linux and Unix file sharing protocol. What you do to configure? What do you need to configure? That's on the dashboard. When you go to dashboard, what you see? Network file system data store. So NFS, data store, that's what you need to do. You need to configure a network file system data store, which is option A. Okay, number 29. Which of the following is a part of a file system objects security settings and defines the setting for auditing access to an object? And the keyword here is auditing. You remember that we talked about yesterday? So we have DACL, ACE, ACL, SACL, which is System Access Control List. And the answer is SACL, System Access Control List. And we use that for auditing, which is option D. Number 30. Which of the following is not a basic file and folder permissions? So it's not basic. You have read and execute, change, write, list, folder contents. B, change. Change. It's not a basic file and folder permission. Number 31, in which of the following ways can user becomes a file's owner? So how the user can be a file's owner? What's the three ways?
A, D,
Yeah,
and B.
that's right. Take ownership of the file, which is A. Create the file. If you create it, you own it. And D, be assigned as the owner by the administrator. Those are the three ways. Very good. Number 32, which of the following file and folder permissions allow a user to read, modify, delete, and create file, but does not allow the user to change a file's permission?
B, modify.
Modify, that's correct. And that's the difference between modify and full control. There's full control I give you, he can assign permissions to users. Modify, you cannot. Okay, so that's all the questions for chapter 4. Now we're gonna start chapter 6. Chapter 6 talks about configuring advanced storage solution. Let's see if I have my PowerPoint, I can share it. Let's see, where is my screen? There we go. Share screen. By the way, that's what we did yesterday. This is the server I have. I think we shared a folder yesterday. What folder we shared? Hang on here. I think folder 1.
Yeah.
Pretty. So I think we gave permission to somebody, but we created somewhere else and I moved it over here. And now I think it has no nobody have a permission on it. You see? I think I shared it on volume G, maybe. Yeah, volume G. So properties, security shared, security. Yeah, that's what we created. We gave some permissions on it. So when I move it to V, we lost all the permissions. Just to let you know, whenever you move or copy from one place to the other, you lose on a different volume, you lose it. But anyway, that's my. Okay, so this is chapter 5. We need to talk about work with storage spaces. We need to configure iSCSI. iSCSI is basically it's everybody using this one here because basically you can create storage and using the TCP/IP protocol to access it. So you didn't need any dedicated fiber channel things to do it. So it's less complication than a fiber channel. And we're going to implement data deduplication, implement storage replica. So that's a lot of stuff to do in this chapter. So using storage spaces. Now, if you go to chapter 5, we're talking about different things. So storage spaces are a feature that provide flexible provisioning of virtual storage, create volume from storage pool. So, I mean, they talk about a lot of stuff, but we need to define it first. So the way it works, you have to have, especially when you deal with the virtual environment, and you need to create some kind of redundancy, is we get used to redundancy basically by installing what? By doing what? A hardware raid. And a hardware raid is very expensive. So we can accomplish the same thing by using this technology we're talking about, the storage spaces. Well, and when we talk about this one, has three main components. Okay. First of all, you need to have, in order to have a storage, what's the first requirement? What do we need?
Hard disk.
Yeah, we need physical disk. That's right. We need a physical disk. And the physical disk, basically, you might have a bunch of them with different interfaces, different types. You might have HDD, SSD. You might have attached. You might have iSCSI. So basically, they used to call them just a bunch of disks. Okay, you put all this disks, and that will represent basically the physical layer of your storage. Then what you do with those disks, like I said, those disks could be like multiple interfaces, like SSD, hard drive, directly attached, or USB or whatever, or SCSI. And what you do is you go over here, and basically what you do, you storage pool. You create a pool. So what's a pool? Basically, you can select, if you have, let's say, 20 disks or 10 disks or whatever number of disks, and after you create a pool, you're going to say, okay, I want to make disk 0, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, disk 1, disk 2 to 3, 5. I want to make them on pool number 1, whatever you want to name that pool. And I want to make disk 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, whatever number of disks. I want to make them in one pool, and they call it pool 2. Okay? And that's basically what we're talking about. So, but we always start with the physical disk. Then after we create the physical disk, we need to select the physical disk and put them in what? In a pool. Once we put them in the pool, then we need to go and create what we call storage spaces. You see? After you do storage spaces, then you get the idea or the option to create volumes. Okay? And that's when you create virtual disks. So when you create virtual disk, you have the options to do VHDX or VHD. You can do them, for example, thin provisioning, which is dynamic, or you can put fix. So if you're using Server 2016 or even 2012, any Windows operating system higher than 2008, they'll support the VHDX. Okay. So the most important part to understand is the three components. You have the physical part, which is basically to have a physical disks available, and these physical disks could have multiple types of interfaces in it. Then what we're going to do with those physical disks, we need to put them into pool. So you create pool, that's the second one. And in the pool, it basically, you form a massive storage, okay, which consists of multiple disks. So you put multiple disks in one group, okay, and we call that a storage pool. Now the question is, can I have more than one storage pool? And the answer, absolutely yes, you can. Now, after you create storage pool, what are you supposed to do? We create storage spaces, okay? And from the storage spaces, you can create volume, okay? And that's basically what the structure of it. That's we'll go over each one of them, as they say. And that's what say. Storage spaces use the concept just a bunch of disks. JPOD. Two or more disks appears as a single disk on the OS with and you can add physical disk to storage pool. So what happened? If, for example, I create storage pool, I get a bunch of disks and I create a storage pool, and we run out of space. Is this going to be the end of it? The answer is no. We can add as we go. We can add more physical disks to the pool as we go if we need them. Just bunch of disks, and that's what they call it. Just bunch of disks. And that's what they say. You can add a physical disk to the storage pool. Existing volume can grow into the new spaces as needed, and can even add external disks to a pool. So you can do that. So far, any question? Because it's very important to understand the basic. So like I said, number one, we need the physical disks, which is, we call them just a bunch of disks. Okay, and these disks doesn't have to be homogeneous. That means they might have a different types of interfaces. Well, somebody said, okay, why you want to do that? Well, if you have a bunch of, like myself, I have like maybe about 20 or 15 different old hard drives. Okay, I collect them. So whenever I have a machine and it goes bad, the first thing I do, I take the hard drives and the memory out of it and junk it. Okay. So sometimes I have a use for them, sometimes I don't. Now, like yesterday, I was looking at I put them like in a little box. So I found 1 gigabyte with 10,000 RPM, 1 terabyte. So I added yesterday to this server. See? Let's see what I put it. You see the disk management here?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I added yesterday. I have disk 0, I have a disk 1, and I have disk 2. I added this. See that? So I have those in the. First of all, when I bought the machine, it has 1 drive. Then I added this one. Then I added this one. So it's a lot of. I mean, you get use of them, bunch of disks. So I can create out of this bunch of disks. I can create what? What you can create? Out of physical disk, what you can create? We create what? Come on.
Storage pool.
Pool, that's right. We create pools. What kind of pool? Not swimming pool, huh?
No, storage pool.
Here we go. All righty. So it's very important to understand the basic differences on it. So using storage spaces, storage spaces feature disk pooling, which collection of physical disk viewed as a single storage space. And that's very important statement. So because originally we start with physical disk, bunch of disks. Then I create a pool, and I put this physical disk into pool. Once you put them in the pool, it's going to act as what? It's going to act as a single storage space, and that's a key word, a single storage space. So every pool you create is going to act as a single storage space. And this is very, very, very important. So I might have SSD, I might have HDD, I might have a SCSI. I group them together. create a pool and become as one single storage space. So there's no need for external RAID controllers and all kind of stuff. Okay, I can create a multiple pool for redundancies, for example. So it's very, very, very good system. And now they have a data deduplication, which is fine. This is another feature. Basically, what that means, if you have multiple, if you have a data that, for example, existed on too many different places, okay, it's gonna save that space and remove them and put them in one, okay, one space. And that's what we call data deduplication. So we eliminate duplicate of data. And then the other one, we have a flexible storage layout, which is 3 options. We have simple space. Simple space is like a spanned volume in regular, like when we talk about in chapter 4. So if you can have, for example, we just talked about earlier, we have a spanning volume, we have a striped volume, and we have a parity, which is rate 5 or 6, okay? So what you're talking about here is a simple space, simple volume with no fault tolerance, okay? Basically, it's the same as we talked about the stripe volume, okay? Now the mirror space, basically a 2-way or 3-way mirror volume. So basically the data is written into multiple places, multiple storage places. So if you get disconnected from the other one, or if you lose the first one, you still have the data on a different one. And of course, you have the parity space. Anytime you talk about parity, it's a mirror space and parity space. Basically, it has fault tolerance. And a parity space is similar to RAID 5 volume and can be configured for single or dual parity. Dual parity is single parity. Basically, it means if you put 3 drives, you can afford to lose one, and you still can operate. Dual parity, you need at least 7 disks, I believe, and you can afford to lose 2 disks, and it still can operate. You see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's basically what you're talking about. And I give you an example here about storage spaces, which is RAID 0, simple space. So you can see the data, FA1, FB, blah, blah, is written onto different disks at the same time. That's disk 1 and disk 2. So that might give you a little performance, but if you lose one, you lose your data. So it's the no fault tolerance. Let's see what we're talking about here. That's the mirror. Mirror, basically, you have disk 1 and disk 2. You write FA1, FA1. This is, you write it, you duplicate it, basically. Okay? This is good, but you're wasting one disk. Now, the ideal thing to have a RAID 5, you get a parity. So you write FA1 over here, and you write FAB and the parity, F2A, parity, F2B over here, and parity here, F2, and so on. So basically what that means, you can lose, if you, for example, lose disk 3, you still operate, okay? Now, why you can still operate? Because your information written in such a way that you can recover. You lose any of the disk, you can recover. Let's see what we're talking about today. Now, using storage spaces, storage space features, continue. Okay, you have something called storage tiering, which is basically, this is very good features, because remember we talked about that you can have multiple disks with different interfaces. So if you have a multiple disk with different interfaces, what does that mean? It means some of the interfaces are faster than the other ones, right? So if I have HDDs disk, which is like an old one, and I have the SSDs, okay, we know the SSDs are what? Which one is faster? The SSDs is faster because they don't have no mechanical parts in it. That's why it's faster. Now, I can put them on the storage tiering. Now, all the fast data that I need the frequent access to it, I store them in the SSDs. All the data that I don't access frequently, it goes automatically to the HDD. And the system are smart. They recognize which data is frequently accessed and which one is not. So if you have like some information you access it frequently, we're gonna put them on. Is gonna be put on the SSD, and the other one will be on the HDD. And you can add SSDs to storage pool with HDDs, and keep the most frequently accessed data on the faster disk. So this is one of the good things about this one, especially the technology changed a lot. So for example, if you have a storage and you bought it a long time ago, and you don't want to waste that storage, okay? We have a lot of storage that use HDD. It's a SATA. I have SATA, but I have like those big drives. I still have them. It's SATA, but now I have a few SSDs. And still the SSD is more expensive compared to the old one. So I don't have to waste them. If I put them all in one pool, and I put the most access data on the SSD, and the stuff that I don't need to archive or log files or whatever, I put them on the HDD, on the old disk. So that's the idea behind it. Okay, any question on that? How we doing? How we doing? I guess. So that's the most important one. Creating storage spaces, which is 3 components of storage space. You need a storage pool. Before you create a storage pool, you need to make sure you have what? You need to have a physical disks. And on the physical disk, you need to have unallocated spaces. That's a key. So unallocated spaces means what? So if I have my server here, if I right click here and I can go to disk management. Okay, so I have unallocated here. So maybe I need to unallocate this guy here and make unallocated right here. So I can select from here, and here. I can put those 3 in one pool. It has to be unallocated space. So that's what unallocated means. So we're going to use, they create what we call primordial pool, a collection of physical disks available to be added to the storage pool. Now, after you do this, you put them in the pool, then you create a virtual disk. So where do you want to create the virtual disk? Where do you get the space? From the pool, from the storage pool. So the first step To create a storage, you need, first of all, you need to have unallocated. You need to have a physical, you need a physical disk and you need unallocated spaces on it, right? That's the first step. The second step, you need to what? Create a pool. And you can create multiple pools if you want to, but you create a pool, and whenever you create a pool, you create virtual disks. Now you have virtual disk, and you have an options here. You have fixed provisioning or you have a thin provisioning. And that depends on the circumstances. If you use a VHDX, they recommend to use thin provisioning. Thin provisioning means the dynamically will grow. Okay. Fixed. If you allocate, for example, 1 terabyte, that's it. If you're not using the 1 terabyte, you lose that space. Okay. So after you use a virtual disk, then you do the volumes. Okay, you create volumes. It's very, very important to understand the process. Okay. Let's see. And that's basically how you do it. You go to storage right here on the dashboard. And the first thing you need to do is what? Create a pool. See that? So there's a multiple ways to do it. And notice here, they put them in orders. So you go start with the pool, then with the disk, then the last one with the volume. So you go over here, you go to task right here, you say new pool, and you create a new pool. And after you create a pool, they give you a list of the disks, and you select that disk that you want to do it on here. And once you select the disk, I think you have some options in there. So hopefully we'll do that tomorrow. We don't have too much time today, but tomorrow I can do that. Put some disks in a pool. Okay. Now, after we create the pool, what we're supposed to do? We create the disks, which is right here. That's the storage pool 3 disk. That's the name it. See, also on server SA1. That's the server. And this is part of your lab. So if you've done the lab, the physical lab, so you're supposed to create multiple of server, and on the server SA1, you can create a virtual disk like disk 1, disk 2, and disk 3, and you can select those 3 and put them in one storage unit called pool, and the name it is what? Pool 3 disks. That's the name of it. Or storage pool. The types of storage pool, and that's the name. Once you create the storage pool, then you go and create the virtual the disks. Now, when you create the disks, you have an options. You want to have a thin provisioning or a thick provisioning, and that's what you need first before you create the pool. That's how it goes. You have those all just a bunch of disks with different interfaces. So what you do is you put this one, for example, you create this pool, right? See that? Pool 1, number 1. Then you put all these right here on this pool right here, pool number 2. Now, after we create the pool, we need to create what we call a virtual disk. And that's basically and when you create virtual disk, you can have options to do what? Without using expensive fault tolerance devices like a physical controller, you can create that disk with simple layout, and you can do it with virtual mirror layout. For example, you put 2 disks in one to be what? To have RAID 1, which is mirror. Or you can do virtual disk with 3, which is parity. This is like equivalent to RAID 5. Or you can do a simple virtual disk. Oh, that's an option. Now, after you create those volumes, I mean, that's disk here, what you do with those? You can create what we call volume after that. Okay? Questions so far?
No, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. And that's basically the process over here, create a storage pool and volume with PowerShell. So you can do it with PowerShell. You use a new storage pool, commandlet to create a new storage. Actually, I might try to do that tonight to use in the command line. But a new volume and a new, so basically, for the first time you do this, I recommend to do it with GUI. I don't want to do it with commandlet or PowerShell. This is good if you do it like with AWS or Azure or something. It's good to know this one to automate the process. If you're repeating doing this one over and over and over and over, so it's good to learn the. If you write script PowerShell, that will be good practice. And for first time you're doing it, do it with GUI. Give you better explanation. So expanding the storage pool. So the advantage of storage space, ability to easily expand the amount of storage available for your virtual disk. So always you can add to the pool. So once the physical disk is added, go to disk management, file and storage services or PowerShell, and you go to the volume that are nearly full. Type, you need to resize partition. So talking about it is not going to do any good till we do it. So I think we need to do this slab. That's what you see. Get virtual disk. Then this is like the pipe, which is combine the two commands together. And you got this vdisk 1, vdisk 2, vdisk 3. That's how you do it. I guess it's a good idea to do that tomorrow. This lab. I'll give you a visual what you're trying to do. Okay. Replacing a failed physical disk in storage pool. To replace a fail or failing physical disk from storage pool, identify the problem disk, replace the failed physical disk, add the replacement disk to the pool. Some people, whenever they configure the pool, one of the options, you can put like a hard drive on standby. So if you put a disk on standby, then if you have a bad disk, already will added that standby on it. And you can retire the old disk. And after that, you repair the storage pool and all virtual disks in it using the commandlet. So basically, you can do it with GUI or you can use this. Get storage pool, whatever the pool name, pool 1, then get virtual disk, repair virtual disk, or you can remove virtual disk. This is a little bit, you need to be familiar with PowerShell to do that. So, questions? If you don't have questions, I guess we stop here and we need to do some labs tomorrow and try to read this chapters, read the material, and we can do the hands-on tomorrow.
Yeah.
I see you guys in a few minutes. You don't have a question?
Sir.
And we're gonna start chapter 6 on Cisco today.
Okay.
So I'll see you in a little bit.